The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. May 25, 2015. Bonus Chapter 1, Mask of Darkness. My journey across the video game world of Hyrule may have come to an end, and I have returned home to the human world, but there were some loose ends which remained unsolved. Within a few hours of getting used to my normal life again, I asked Rainbow Dash if she had a book regarding the history of Hyrule, and her response was shocking as she didn't think I would be interested. It was fortunate that she had brought the book with her, for I was very curious to know about additional stories that occurred after Ganondorf was defeated. At first it looked as though these stories had little to do with me, because some occurred in the past timeline with others in the future timeline, which I discovered due to the real Evil King revealing this information to me, yet in truth they would be significant, especially when it came to future adventures, because I was fated to travel to another world which is different from Hyrule, and is on the verge of destruction, as I have to somehow prevent said destruction from taking place. When will I leave for this other world? I don't know, because Ganondorf said it could happen at any moment, so that means I'm always going to be on guard, making things awkward when it comes to my friends. They can't remember the events which affected all of us, so they aren't able to help me out, yet deep down I wish that wasn't the case, but I guess I'm going to be dealing with this on my own. Anyway, there were some stories from Hyrule mentioned in this book called Hyrule Historia, yet Rainbow Dash wished it had been called the Book of Mudora for in-game accuracy, but these were tales I never saw the resolution due to them taking place after being sent back home after a lengthy struggle. One particular story revolves around the Happy Mask Salesman, a person Sonata Dusk, one of the three sirens, ended up portraying, who is renowned throughout this world as a seller of masks. Some would view such a profession as odd, but then sometimes the most unusual jobs are the most exciting. According to the summary of the story, the Happy Mask Salesman went on a journey to find a mask which was said to be a rarity, but little did she know that it would be the catalyst which would change everything. The story begins a few years after the war ended, where the King of Hyrule unified most of the tribes into one kingdom, and Sonata had been quite the success story. When she originally began her business, she allowed people to borrow her masks where they would sell them on their own. If successful, they would pay her back, thus effectively becoming a happy mask salesperson. Over time, she didn't like being confined inside of a shop, as she never got to experience the world beyond Hyrule Castle Town, yet it was an unexpected visit from Princess Zelda, who I know better as my friend Twilight Sparkle, who portrayed the princess, that changed Sonata's perspective. Yes, Twilight was really young back then, where she visited Sonata along with the King of Hyrule, which happened about 3 years before Ganondorf rose to power.
Welcome to the Happy Mask Shop, where your happiness can be found when you purchase one of my masks,
said Sonata.
This is a rather strange shop, father,
said Twilight.
If you are to one day become queen of our kingdom Zelda, you must have a good understanding of the people. So far, I have shown you the citizens of the town as well as of Kakariko village, yet this is your first time learning about the business aspect behind Hyrule's providence. I chose this particular shop because it has been extremely popular since it first opened a year ago, and I also needed to take care of some purchases anyway because of the upcoming masquerade ball,
said the king.
Why does this kingdom need a shop for masks?
asked Twilight.
Most other shops throughout the land sell typical items favored by adventurers and would-be heroes, but then they don't do much business as adventurers aren't needed during these peaceful times, and their regular customers do not purchase very often, which has been disheartening. So, we have places like this which provides a unique service that serves the needs of the people,
replied the king.
Your praise is most pleasing, Your Majesty,
said Sanada.
Tell me, Sanada, do you have the order which I placed about 2 weeks ago?
Asked the king.
Indeed, as they arrived yesterday,
replied Sanada. She then got up from her chair, and walked over to where there was a large stack of masks, before she snatched about a dozen from near the bottom, which caused the rest to drop without falling on the floor. Twilight looked surprised at such an unusual feat, yet the king merely chuckled and clapped in utter amusement. It's as though he were used to seeing such antics, considering he could use the alternative, and that involved having her arrested for almost destroying something of value to him.
These are the 12 masks you ordered, Your Majesty, and as you can see they are in perfect condition, which is my guarantee, given masks mean so much to me. Anyway, I need a moment to see how much each is worth, so please be patient.
She took out a piece of paper, and began doing some calculations in her head before writing something down and presenting it.
Your total comes to about 688 rupees, which is much less than what I was thinking.
That's too much, said Twilight.
Now Zelda, these masks are extremely valuable, so their price is high,
said the king.
But father, paying 688 rupees for something which will be used a couple of times?
Asked Twilight.
I am so very sorry if my daughter offends you, but I suppose she is at that age where her curiosity knows no bounds. Zelda, the masks originally cost 956 rupees, yet the price was reduced down because of being a good negotiator,
replied the king.
What does that mean?
Asked Twilight.
Your father wanted to make a deal, Your Highness, and after about an hour, I agreed with his offer. I'm glad that you came when you did to pick up your order, because you're the last one that will be served around here,
replied Sanada.
What does she mean?
Asked Twilight.
The Happy Mask shop is going to be closing down, for the owner here plans on traveling around Hyrule selling her masks. At first I did not understand such a request, but over time I came to realize what she wanted to do,
replied the king. Even though Sanada was going to go through with her plan, it was something Twilight would suggest that really gave her the inspiration she was needing. To think that someone who was so eccentric would be given the perfect advice from a little girl who was still trying to understand the world. It shows that this version of Twilight would become a princess in her own right, much like she has done in Equestria.
Miss Saleswoman?
Asked Twilight.
I like that name, Your Highness, but what is your concern?
Asked Sanada.
You should carry around all those masks in a giant bag, so you can move them around with ease,
replied Twilight.
A giant bag? I was thinking of using a box myself to carry them around, but then that would be rather cramped quarters, and could damage my merchandise. Your Highness, I think you have quite the future as a saleswoman should the notion of being a princess not work out for you. I don't have any giant bags lying around, but maybe I can stitch together a bunch of small ones to make one big one which I can carry around on my back,
said Sanada. Most people would break their backs or even get flattened were they to do something that ridiculous, yet Sanada was determined to follow Twilight's advice. The king merely chuckled away at the idea his own daughter would become a saleswoman, yet it was an idea he could consider to give his daughter more confidence, and prepare her for when she must succeed him as ruler of Hyrule someday. Sanada thanked Twilight repeatedly, and proceeded to run around her shop trying to find as many small bags as she could.
It's a good thing I'm skilled at knitting, otherwise I'd have to find a person who can perform a bizarre miracle. My parents wanted me to become a seamstress because of having a natural talent, yet masks have become my calling in life, and who am I to refuse the dream of making people happy by selling them masks? Why are you closing your home?
Asked Twilight.
When I first started this shop just over a year ago, Your Highness, my aim was to sell masks to other people, and anyone who was willing to be an assistant could borrow my wares for as long as necessary. From there they would sell the masks on their own, and pay me back the money from borrowing it. Sure, it sounds like a complicated system, but even though it did work, I had only one problem, and that was being stuck inside while the assistants got to see much of the world beyond Hyrule Castle Town. It made me realize I should be out there traveling the land, so I decided to do just that. I didn't want to be restricted, but rather free,
replied Sonata.
Freedom? Everyone deserves that,
smiled Twilight.
Many in the kingdom are unhappy, and I wish to make them feel good. That is why I wanted to start the Happy Mask Shop, Your Highness, so that people like yourself would be happy with my masks, for each one has its own unique history. For instance, the ones your father ordered from me used to belong to an earlier civilization who lived in this land, but they suddenly disappeared without a trace, although some legends believe they left the surface to live in the sky. Now, you may think what I sold to your father are replicas, but that isn't the kind of person I am. For me, having the genuine article makes for an even better experience, which is why keeping them protected is a wise idea, Your Majesty,
said Sonata.
This is why I gave you a permit allowing this shop to exist, for your knowledge of masks is unprecedented,
said the king.
And I do appreciate it. But the decision to travel around Hyrule works better because not everyone can access my shop as long as it remains here in town. I aim on selling my masks to each tribe, even if I have to risk life and limb in the process, but hopefully I won't lose any limbs. The Gorons and Zoras will be hard sells because they don't seem to have much of an inkling for masks, but the Kokiri will definitely appreciate my business given they are children. And what child wouldn't want to have their very own mask? The Gerudo, on the other hand, will be a challenge given how tensions are still an issue, yet I know someone who frequents there who can help me out,
said Sonata.
I am sure they will form an alliance with the royal family in due time,
said the king.
That's not up to me to judge, but rather up to their leader, who seems to be rather distant these days. My friend who visits their fortress says their king spends much of his time inside of his library pondering over books in the hopes of finding something which has eluded him for a long time. Maybe he wants to become a librarian in addition to being the Gerudo king, but that's just my guess, Your Majesty, so don't pay me any mind,
said Sonata.
You reminded me of something,
began the king.
What's that?
asked Sonata.
I have heard rumors from many visiting dignitaries about a mask which is so mysterious that many have tried to claim it for centuries, yet none have ever found it because they say it was hidden away in shadows,
replied the king.
A mask that no one has found before? Well, it looks like I've now got another reason for traveling,
smiled Sonata. Most people would have ignored something like this, yet she was willing to find it no matter what the cost would be. After her shop closed down, where she left behind a message explaining why she was going around the kingdom selling her wares, Sonata began traveling around visiting the different tribes on numerous occasions, all in an effort to sell her masks. People at first didn't know what to make of the message she left behind due to it being both confusing and poorly written, but they quickly figured out her methods after about 4 months, and eagerly awaited her arrival. During the following 3 years, she would sell her masks to each of the tribes, which made her happy, yet deep down there was something that would make her extremely happy, and that was finding this mysterious mask. When traveling about, she made sure to inquire people in the hopes of getting information, but sadly no one had anything to say. One day, someone did provide her a clue, for she was on the verge of giving up. The person was Spitfire, who at the time was a lowly Gerudo thief who served under Neburu, or Rainbow Dash as I knew her from my experiences, rather than the second-in-command which she becomes 7 years from now. Sanada was paying a visit to the Gerudo's fortress to sell her masks, and she chanced upon her friend who helped her out because this associate frequented there.
Sanada? What are you doing here? I'm usually visiting the Gerudo's fortress around this time given how I always finish my traveling here before going back to Hyrule Castle Town, and repeating the process all over again in an endless fashion. I'm surprised that you are here, Arya, as I thought you were running around Hyrule Field by now,
replied Sanada.
Challengers have been few and far in between, and those who take part in my marathon are weak because they lack that killer instinct. Oh, and be thankful that I give you permission to call me by my real name, for most known me as the Running Woman.
The Running Man was someone who enjoyed challenging people to races, and he also had a soft spot for rabbits, a creature that had become extinct because of excessive hunting. I know this person as Arya Blaze, another of the sirens, who calls herself the Running Woman, and just like the one mentioned in the book, she is interested in rabbits. I always wondered where this fascination for such an adorable creature came from, but no one has figured it out as she keeps such knowledge to herself.
Did you come here to sell more of those masks again? I don't know why the Gerudo continue to eat out of your hands like they do, but you must be doing something right. If it wasn't for you, none of this would be happening,
said Sanada.
You're lucky Neburu was around to give you permission to enter their fortress for business purposes, for if it had been their king then you'd probably be locked up in their dungeon, or much worse,
said Arya.
What could be more terrifying than a dungeon?
Asked Sanada.
I rest my case,
replied Arya.
But yes, I'm thankful that you got me inside given how you're an honorary member, and they are appreciative of me for selling them masks which have really improved on morale around here given tensions still exist between them and the Hylians. I'm just glad I'm allowed to be here given how I am a Hylian, yet I don't associate with the royal family. Anyway, I came here for an additional reason, and hopefully someone here will have something to say this time,
said Sanada.
You're still trying to find that mask?
Asked Arya.
I must have it because it could be sold to someone,
replied Sanada.
At least your business savvy remains intact, although your mind is a different matter entirely. You've been looking for this mask for the last 3 years, and you haven't even come close, so why continue knowing that you'll never find it?
Asked Arya.
I haven't asked the right people, and I figured that someone among the Gerudo will have an answer. In my previous visits here, I've asked the wrong people who don't know anything regarding hidden treasures which exist out there, so I'll ask someone who would know something which will get me one step closer,
replied Sanada. I never knew she was borderline insane when I talked to her during my journey in Hyrule, yet I never really asked about her personal life, so knowing this was certainly surprising to say the least. Arya does make a good point though about Sanada being obsessed with wanting this mask, but I suppose no amount of effort will make her change her mind.
So who do you suppose has information?
Asked Arya.
I've heard that the one who is an attendant of Neburu knows many secrets,
replied Sanada.
You mean Spitfire, don't you? I wouldn't refer to her as being an attendant, for she finds such a notion to be insulting. I've seen her complaining constantly about why she has to serve Neburu, and longs to become second in command of the Gerudo because it's something she never stops talking about. Many in the fortress believe she is trying to worm her way into Ganondorf's good graces in the hopes of being recognized, but she doesn't care what people think. If you plan on talking to Spitfire, I suggest preparing to hear consistent whining from her about how she is nothing more than a mere thief,"
said Arya.
"Do you know where I can find her?"
asked Sonata.
"She's most likely in the kitchen carrying out some mundane task beneath her notice, or she could be in the training ground, although the former is where I would personally look. If you think I will accompany you, then you're wrong, as I need to head back to Hyrule Field, and run around there for a while because something else is on my mind." Hopefully, Spitfire won't make things difficult given her attitude, but it's none of my concern given you'll do anything to get information regarding that mask. Why you're seeking out a mask that's said to have evil powers makes no sense, yet I've a feeling it's gone beyond wanting to sell it,"
replied Arya.
"Now whatever gave you that idea?"
asked Sonata.
"You're obsessed,"
replied Arya. As she began to run off towards Hyrule Field to pass the time, Sonata merely shrugged her shoulders, and walked towards the kitchen, which is where Spitfire was. Long before she became the new leader of the Gerudo after Ganondorf was banished to the Sacred Realm because of what he had done in the future, she served under Rainbow Dash. This was deemed humiliating in her heart because she believed she deserved what was seen as the highest honor in the tribe, yet she was passed over due to an incident several years ago. While she would eventually discover the truth, that didn't happen for another 7 years, so in the current time period, she felt immense rage towards the one person who effectively robbed her of her dream, and grew closer to Ganondorf by becoming a faithful follower. It didn't take long for Sonata to find Spitfire inside of the fortress, yet she wasn't happy that her first visitor for quite some time was someone she viewed as worthless.
"What do you want?"
asked Spitfire.
"I see you're busy preparing tonight's meal,"
asked Sonata.
"Because Naburu claims it was my turn to make food." "Bah! Why do I have to do something that's clearly beneath my notice when instead there are much more important things that need to be done?" Ever since she became second in command, I've been obeying her like a slave, yet I should be the one in charge while the great Ganondorf is away speaking to that Hylian king about an alliance. At least he knows me as someone who is loyal to him, for I've been informing him about all activities that go on around here,"
replied Spitfire.
"You're quite a barrel of laughs,"
said Sonata.
"If not for Naburu making you an honorary member of the tribe, you would have been thrown into the dungeon a long time ago, and if I were second in command, you would have been executed for being a constant nuisance. The great Ganondorf sees your very existence as amusing, which is why he agreed with Naburu's decision, but I won't complain about his edicts,"
said Spitfire. "Even though she did say to me after freeing her in the future after she was manipulated by his surrogate mothers, there was so much rage boiling below the surface, perhaps some aspects of the magic which brainwashed her wasn't that at all. Rather, it was her own jealousy which made it easy for her to be controlled." Either way, Spitfire clearly didn't want anything to do with Sonata's visit, and wanted to get back to work, yet she quickly realized that ignoring someone like her is impossible given she has quite the presence.
"Why won't you get lost?" "No need to resort to such words, you know,"
replied Sonata.
"I must get this finished before I can no longer bear it, but I can't do that with you hanging around,"
moaned Spitfire.
"Then I'll be quick, and get straight to the point. I'm here for information regarding a mask, and you're the one person among your people I haven't asked yet,"
said Sonata.
"Are you still looking for that thing?"
asked Spitfire.
I've been searching all across the kingdom for the last 3 years,
replied Sonata.
Despite how annoying you can be, especially selling something as pathetic as masks, I've got to admit that you are pretty persistent about this pursuit. I'm also surprised that it took you this long to come to me for information,
said Spitfire.
Every time I've come here to sell my masks, you are never around,
said Sonata. That explains why Spitfire is the last Gerudo she needed to ask, but then you would think she could have asked a lot sooner had she come at a different time rather than follow her schedule where she pays a visit at least 3 times a year. Ganondorf was the one Gerudo she had no plans on asking, for as king of the Gerudo, he had more pressing matters that revolved around murdering the king of Hyrule, and claiming the Triforce for his very own, so that just left Spitfire, who surprisingly did have information about this mystery mask even though she didn't exactly look like someone who would know anything.
So you believe me to have the knowledge you seek?
asked Spitfire.
Despite being Neighboru's subordinate, which is displeasing from your perspective, I know that you've been around many places beyond Hyrule due to fulfilling certain obligations for your king, if I recall correctly,
replied Sonata.
The great Ganondorf knows me to be trustworthy enough to fulfill his personal tasks, but how did you come across this information about me?
asked Spitfire.
I have friends who have said some things, yet most of the time I've been able to figure it out on my own because the clues were easy enough to follow. I don't know what would compel your king to want to seek out anything beyond Hyrule's borders, but you've been there, which is why I turn to you for information. Even if you give me very little, it will be enough for what I'm going to be doing, and I'll leave you alone once I've gotten what I'm here for,
replied Sonata.
If you weren't a mask saleswoman, you'd make for a pretty decent thief,
said Spitfire.
So do I have your cooperation?
asked Sonata.
While it would be delicious to deny you what you want to know, I'll humor you a little by revealing my secrets.
This mask you're looking for. It was hidden away, but no one knows what that is because those who originally possessed it no longer exist. Not even their descendants have any ideas because they wanted to distance themselves from their ancestors.
What I can tell you is that it was buried in the darkest depths of Gamelon, a kingdom far away from Hyrule, so if you plan on getting this mask, you'll have to leave this land,
replied Spitfire. Because of Ganondorf's rise to power where he claimed the Triforce, the world became filled with darkness, so Sonata decided that it would be foolish leaving during such times, so she abandoned her dream of finding this mask, and dedicated herself to traveling about the kingdom where she would sell her masks to those who needed some cheering up. This is where fate had decided to take her, but because I warned the king of Ganondorf's plans by returning to the right moment in the past, he never conquered Hyrule, so she had no reason to stay. When I say that I warned him, it was the hero of time according to this book who prevented the dark future from happening. And where can I find Gamelon? asked Sonata.
I don't know its exact location given how I was only commanded to visit the surrounding kingdoms, so you'll need to figure that out on your own,
replied Spitfire.
At least I have a good idea as to where my journey will take me next,
said Sonata.
I've told you what I know, so now you need to keep your word and leave me alone,
said Spitfire.
Yep. I'll leave right now. Yet I suggest not allowing your hatred towards Neighboru ruin the friendship you once had with her. She never wanted to become Ganondorf's second-in-command because of the way she feels about how he's led your people, yet she accepted so that she would not be suspected of betraying him. I've heard her say that among the Gerudo, you were destined to assume the position, but the accident brought her into the limelight much to her disdain. Before you go and do something you'll live to regret later, why not have a talk with Neighboru, and hear what she has to say? Oh, and I advise against being all chummy with your king, for who knows how long that will last given he could just replace you,"
said Sanada. Despite having a unique personality that borders on being annoying to so many people, Sanada did have impressive words of wisdom which she provides at random times, so she was someone who proved to be rather astute about her surroundings. With the information she had acquired from Spitfire, the time had come for her to leave Hyrule, and go on a journey to find that coveted mask, but she had no idea if someone had already found it. In her eyes, she hoped no one succeeded because then it would mean making history. Before she left the kingdom in an effort to find Ganelon, Sanada spoke with the king of Hyrule at the castle who happened to catch wind of what she planned to do from the sole survivor of the Sheikah.
"So you are leaving this land?"
asked the king.
"How did you know?"
asked Sanada.
"The attendant who serves as the guardian of my daughter discovered that you were planning on leaving Hyrule,"
replied the king.
"Yes, I am going on a journey to Ganelon, and hopefully find what I've spent these past years searching for,"
said Sanada.
"Most would have given up on trying to obtain something that elusive, yet you have not once admitted defeat, and now all of that effort has at last paid off. You have a pretty good lead, but the journey ahead will be most difficult. I do wish that you could stay here, for much of my kingdom could do with you cheering them up, but I suppose this was meant to be,"
said the king.
"If Ganondorf had succeeded in his plan, I wouldn't be going,"
said Sanada.
"He has been arrested for treason, and shall be executed within the next few years as Hyrule has had other criminals besides him that must be punished accordingly,"
said the king.
"How did you know of his intentions?"
asked Sanada.
"That is a secret which will remain with the royal family, so I am sorry to say that I cannot answer it. In case you were curious though about the fate of his people, the Gerudo shall be making a necessary sacrifice, and the 6 sages shall deal with the criminals who have threatened our peace,"
replied the king. "Even though this all happened after I returned home to the human world, I really wanted to learn about what happened next." Ganondorf would be executed for his crimes, yet something went horribly wrong during the process, which is its own story, but what happened to his people was more interesting. Because of their low numbers, the Gerudo would be wiped out within a couple of generations, so according to official historical records, they were assimilated into Hylian society, and any children born were to be raised as Hylians with no knowledge regarding their Gerudo lineage. It wasn't the best way for them to go, but at least they didn't have to suffer. The Gerudo's fortress would fall into disuse within a few years, and the Spirit Temple was converted into a prison where dangerous criminals were sent, but whether this is accurate or not remains to be seen. It seems the past of Hyrule took a much different path than the future.
"I won't pry into something which isn't my affair,"
said Sanada.
"Of all the people whose lives you made better with your masks, my daughter Zelda perhaps had the strongest reaction. I remember years ago when she questioned your methods and purpose given your business is not traditional, but that is what made you truly unique, for you went in a direction most would never consider because they would view it as foolish. She will no doubt make a fine queen when the time comes for her to ascend the throne and succeed me, yet if only you could remain and serve as a guide who can teach her to have fun, and not needing to be serious,"
said the king.
"She has her attendant,"
said Sanada.
"If anything, that one is more towards being a serious, but then her tribe have always been that way for generations. I would not have them change for the world because their work and sacrifices to protecting the royal family shall never be forgotten. I am guessing my words will not make you change your mind?" "No, I had a suspicion they would fail, but then you have the determination in your eyes to find what you seek," said the king.
"I might return one day," said Sanada.
"There is no telling when that will happen, for the kingdom of Ganelon is far from Hyrule. If anything, I would say you will be gone for months, or perhaps years, for the desire to find what drives you onward is one which cannot be ignored. Hopefully, you will not succumb to any madness which might happen because you will be traveling on your own for a great deal of time," said the king.
"Oh, I'm sure I'll be fine along the way," said Sanada.
"Then I wish you success,"
said the king. As she turned around to take her leave of Hyrule Castle, Applejack, who in this world serves as the attendant of Princess Zelda, approached the king, for she had an important message to speak about.
"Impa, has Zelda finished her studies for today? I can always rely on you, her nanny, to keep tabs on such matters, especially during these times where figuring out what must be done regarding the Gerudo. That is the reason why I have come here before you, in addition to something else which must be addressed. First of all, I have spoken with the current leader of the Gerudo, and she agrees that her people will assimilate into Hylian society, yet they wish to try and see if they can survive as they currently are despite their numbers. If within 2 generations their condition continues to deteriorate, then they shall abandon their fortress,"
said Applejack.
"And the other condition?"
asked the king.
"Regarding future children born? They shall raise them as Hylians, but will not reveal anything about their tribal ways to them. The leader of the Gerudo is aware that this is a difficult task for her people to perform given how their history is very rich like that of the other tribes, yet she knows that if they desire to live in peace, then a sacrifice must be made. She has also said that you have their permission to convert the temple located out in the desert into a prison where criminals are to be punished. The temple is one they have no connection to, so they do not mind what becomes of it,"
replied Applejack.
"I know it sounds horrific that I'm taking everything away from them, but it must be done because the other tribes still show animosity towards them. This has become especially evident in the wake of Ganondorf's treachery being exposed, and his subsequent arrest several weeks ago,"
said the king.
"And that is what I have come to speak to you about. The Gerudo King of Thieves has proven to be a difficult one to keep under control because he has been showing defiance ever since the Royal Guard captured him after his intentions became known. Your guards have been asking for additional reinforcements as they fear a possible escape given how dangerous he still is. My suggestion would be to have his power stripped from him before anything bad can happen. I also suggest that his execution happen as soon as possible, for a delay could inspire others to act in a similar manner if they feel oppressed regarding your authority,"
said Applejack. "I never would have guessed Ganondorf would be killed for his crimes, and instead would remain imprisoned for the rest of his life, but then the act of treason in Hyrule is death, and the evil king back in the past had no remorse for his actions. What happens to him though isn't a part of this story, but I have a feeling knowing what became of him is important because I could be forced into another fight against him if I end up going to another world, according to his final words." Sanada decided to leave the kingdom through the Lost Woods as it was the only exit she knew about, and she was aware that non-forest folk who enter the woods can be transformed into Stalfos due to being cursed. Those who become Stalfos are then forced to guard the forest temple for eternity, or until they are destroyed, where they will move on to the next life. Sanada wasn't afraid though, as she was determined to reach Ganelon no matter what, but she had no idea of the kinds of danger which exist in other kingdoms. As she walked through the Lost Woods, where the darkness of the trees made things eerie, she was stopped by a skull kid playing a flute who was curious as to why a Hylian would be wandering about. A skull kid is what happens to a Kokiri should they wander into the forest, and this one in particular was wearing something which I borrowed from Sonata at the time. The skull mask, which he said would make him look tougher.
"You're a strange one for coming here to these woods,"
said the Skull Kid.
"I remember that mask being a part of my collection, yet I allowed my assistant to borrow it, and it ended up in the hands of an unusual child, which obviously was you. I'm not complaining, mind you, given how you look very happy wearing it,"
smiled Sonata.
"It makes me look tougher,"
said the Skull Kid.
"That mask was designed for that exact purpose,"
said Sonata.
"I bought it from a Kokiri girl who seemed confused as to what she was doing, but it was worth the 10 rupees,
said the Skull Kid.
"Only 10 rupees? The skull mask is worth 20 rupees, which means you didn't pay my assistant entirely, and she most likely had to pay the difference with her own money, which must have been annoying. Well, I'm sure it was an honest mistake. Anyway, do you happen to know which way I can go which will lead me out of these woods, and eventually out of the kingdom?"
asked Sonata.
"If you keep going in that direction, you'll come across an old oak tree which was one of the first trees to exist in the Lost Woods. If you turn west and keep going from there for about an hour, you'll come out of the woods, and into whatever land lies beyond. You know, I am curious as to why you would want to leave this place. That giant bag you carry on your back must be filled with masks, so perhaps I could purchase some more? I'm willing to pay the full amount this time around,"
replied the Skull Kid.
"I'm sure you have plenty of money on hand to buy another mask or two, but I think you are more than satisfied with the one you currently have. I do appreciate you giving me the proper directions I need, so I won't leave you empty-handed, so you can have this mask without any form of payment,"
said Sonata. Thanking the Skull Kid for his directions, she continued onwards, yet she was unaware that this child did have ulterior motives which no one was expecting. The mask she had given him was one he didn't appreciate, but he was just too impulsive to understand the true nature behind something designed to bring friends closer together. She knew this Skull Kid had friendship issues because he was lonely, which is why she gave him the
mask of friendship, but he would become a major problem not only for her, but for me as well someday.
He made sure to remember the giant bag, so if he forgets what she looks like, he can find her easily by looking for anyone carrying a giant bag on their back. Sonata's journey to reach Ganelon would begin as she stepped out of the Lost Woods, and into an open field, yet she should have brought a map because this would be a long quest. Much of her experiences were never recorded in this book, so I can't say what became of her along the way, but there was one incident that happened at a small village known as Al Shriek. Quite the morbid name to be sure, yet this place would make Sonata realize that her obsession with wanting a single mask had taken its toll on her. When going on a long journey, one lesson certainly comes to mind, and that is making sure to have someone on the journey with you as a means of communication, for if you lack a companion, things can quickly get strange. For Sonata, the fact she had been on her own for such a long time began wreaking havoc with her mind, and someone like her can become unpredictable when her mind gets messed up. Upon reaching the village of Al Shriek, one villager took notice of the traveler carrying the giant bag on her back, and who was uttering what sounded like gibberish.
"It took me a long time, but I finally arrived at the place where I've been trying to find for what seems like forever. Why did this village have to be so well hidden even though anyone can see it? Who sent me the wrong way? Who was the wise guy who insisted I travel about on my own? Who? Me? Oh yeah. Well, I'm cursing myself for doing something stupid like going around on my own in a foreign land without someone to talk to,"
said Sonata.
"Excuse me. Are you speaking to me?
Asked Sanada.
What kind of a question was that? I'm just being silly because it's been a long while since I last had any interaction with a fellow human. All I've been seeing as far as living creatures go are monsters, and while they ignored me for some odd reason, I felt offended by it.
Replied Sanada. Like I said, when you travel around on your own without any kind of human contact, you tend to act strangely because you only have your own mutterings as a means of company. Most people would have succumbed to insanity by this point, yet Sanada isn't like most people given her strong optimistic personality combined with her unusual quirks.
You must really be out of it, especially since you carry around that giant bag. Oh, this? It contains a wide assortment of masks which I sell to people by traveling around Hyrule, or rather that was before leaving there, and trying to find Gamelon wherever that is,"
said Sanada.
"What? You actually sell masks? Wow! I've never heard of anyone selling anything like that before." "I'm the only one who does,"
said Sanada.
"Did you say Gamelon? Well, you're in luck because it's just on the other side of that mountain, but I don't know why you want to go there of all places. No one has gone to that place because of what happened a few centuries ago. That kingdom used to be quite a beautiful one, yet a civil war destroyed everything, so now it's nothing more but a wasteland where only treasure hunters and archaeologists go to find themselves their fortune." "I need to go there for a mask,"
said Sanada.
"Excuse me.
I can sympathize with this person because if she had said that to me, I would have had the exact same reaction. If you're going somewhere where hidden treasures haven't been found in centuries, people expect you're going there in the hopes of finding gold, jewels, or some other kind of ancient artifacts worth a great value. Looking for something trivial like a mask would definitely cause confusion, and maybe make people think of you as unusual, or perhaps downright insane."
"Yes, I said a mask,"
replied Sanada.
"That's what I thought you said, but I'm not all that surprised given how you're not a common traveler, yet I've heard stories about a mask being buried in Gamelon somewhere, for it used to be home to an ancient tribe. Not much is known as they vanished long before any records of their existence became available, but this mask you seek was buried in the deepest darkness out of fear of it being misused by the unworthy. Of course, such an idea of a mask being filled with a great evil is just ridiculous, as who would believe such a story?" "I believe it,"
said Sanada.
"Why am I not surprised, and I'm guessing you did research." "As a matter of fact, yes,"
replied Sanada.
"Then you plan on going to Gamelon to find this mask?" "Yes, because I've been wanting it for a very long time, and I'm not about to give up now when I'm so close. Originally, I was going to sell it to someone because people do enjoy purchasing unusual masks, but I've since changed my viewpoint. I'll keep it for myself as it's such a rare piece, yet I don't say this very often,"
replied Sanada. This mask, according to the book, was used as a tribute within hexing rituals to a powerful deity who was a spirit of chaos and destruction, but because this unknown tribe feared its misuse, it was hidden to prevent history from repeating itself. Sanada was well aware of this, but she wanted to find the mask as a testament to her dedication as a happy mask saleswoman. It was known as Majora's Mask, and while it was very bizarre looking in appearance according to ancient drawings Sanada discovered through her research prior to leaving Hyrule, she felt destiny had chosen her to be the one to find it after all this time. Gamelon was a kingdom filled with a rich history which was similar to that of Hyrule, yet this land didn't have anything like the Triforce, so no one became corrupted with thoughts of wanting to claim absolute power. But, Problems would soon arise when word started spreading about a great power which had been buried by an ancient people who lived in the kingdom hundreds of years before modern civilization came along. No one at the time knew that what they had heard was in fact Majora's Mask, for the rumors never mentioned that this power was simply something you wear on your face. Once those rumors spread far enough, various groups began fighting one another to claim the power they felt would give them the means to dominate Gamelon. This is what happens when you become consumed with power. I should know personally because it once happened to me where I became consumed wanting power to rule over Equestria. Anyway, when things got to a boiling point, it resulted in a series of wars which almost wiped out the entire kingdom. A small pocket survived the wars that lasted several decades, but the land couldn't be saved as it was too far gone, so it was abandoned within a few years, and over time became the current wasteland which Sonata intends on exploring. As far as she was aware, the mask was never discovered, which meant her chances of finding it were pretty good. The next part of her journey was never recorded, but her arrival at the supposed site where the mask was buried was. By the time she finally reached her destination, a graveyard which had seen better days, Sonata was prepared to go grave robbing, but was stopped by someone.
"Why have you come here?" "I'm looking for a mask,"
replied Sonata.
"You seek to claim Majora's Mask, do you? I cannot stop you from taking it from where it was buried many centuries ago, but I can warn you of the consequences that if it were removed from its place of rest. Great disaster shall befall upon worlds where this mask's dark powers be misused, and you shall be given the blame for wanting to take it in the first place. While your ambition is a noble one, for I know you do not wish to use it, you'll bring calamity to a world that isn't prepared to deal with ancient powers long forgotten by mankind, so I implore that you turn away now before it's too late." "Who are you?"
asked Sonata.
"I used to be of the ancient tribe which used the power of the mask, yet for these past centuries, I have been forced to haunt this place as a spirit. I am cursed to remain here and protect Majora's Mask until someone comes along and performs an incantation where I can finally move on from this mortal coil. I learned of the true nature of the mask, and decided that it needed to be destroyed before anyone could abuse its power, but my people discovered my actions and had me executed as a warning to anyone who might betray them. I couldn't rest in peace knowing what I did to destroy that accursed item, so I remain here in limbo protecting it in the hopes that none shall claim it." "Well, I'm here to take it,"
said Sonata.
"Yes, I am well aware of that." "And you won't stop me?"
asked Sonata.
"That is something I cannot do as a spirit, but I can still warn you. Curses are just a figment of the imagination, and besides I doubt this mask is as evil as you claim it to be. It's just an impressive-looking costume piece which has a lot of historical value, which is the reason why I want to keep it myself, for anyone else would probably just be careless and end up damaging it. I've spent these last 3 years trying to find this mask, and now that I've made it this far, there is no way I'm turning back now,"
said Sonata.
"Then my words means nothing to you." "Well, they certainly were lengthy on the one hand, and filled with all kinds of regret,"
replied Sonata. Only someone like her wouldn't take such a situation like this seriously, but you can't blame her given how little interaction she has had throughout her journey. This spirit warned her once again about the evil locked inside of the mask, and insisted she leave it where it is so that it can forever be lost in the darkness, but Sonata was determined to get it. When it became obvious that the words of the spirit were having no effect, it decided to give in to her desires, yet it had one last thing that needed to be said.
"You have chosen not to heed my warning, so go ahead and enter the darkness, but know that you have doomed numerous kingdoms and worlds because of having a strong temptation to have this accursed mask. Whether or not you can live with such a weight on your conscience remains to be seen, yet perhaps madness will become part of who you are. If you plan on returning to where you came from, then know that is impossible should the mask become yours.
I was planning on going home, said Sonata.
If you claim that mask, you can never go back, for you must wander around until either the evil within is destroyed, or you end up succumbing to the curse. My words no doubt do not change such a stance, yet I have given ample warning.
I'll take the risk, said Sonata.
Ah, so my words did ring true. I'm not going to let you scare me into leaving without it,
said Sonata. If only she had not been consumed with wanting Majora's mask so badly, then nothing would have happened, but she was insistent on finding it. While she did have good intentions, this mask brings nothing but chaos and destruction to all that are unfortunate enough to be plagued by its terrible power. Her actions would bring another world to the verge of ruin, and the one who stole the mask from her was someone person no one ever suspected given how insignificant they were in their eyes. Why all of this happened after she claimed the mask is something I don't understand given how circumstantial it was, but that was something I should be able to find if I continue reading this book. The spirit from the ancient tribe disappeared, which allowed Sonata access to the darkness that was basically a pit beneath this graveyard, and upon entering she would eventually discover what she had been looking for.
Is this it? Is this what I've spent these last few years looking for? The images in that book don't do this any justice, but it does look very impressive, especially with all that detail on the front, not to mention the crazy colors. I wonder why it has those large eyes? They look as though they are staring into my soul. You know not what you've done. Who said that?
Asked Sonata.
Curse. Must be the wind, although it sounds like someone is speaking to me,
said Sonata.
Worlds shall fall because you have taken that which should remain in the shadows for eternity. I'm not going to listen to such nonsense,
said Sonata.
The fate of many has been sealed.
These final words would encourage anyone who had come this far to turn back, but Sonata remained dedicated to the cause, and picked up Majora's mask where she held it in front of her. She did experience a temptation to wear it because it was a mask and all, however, she was aware that it was evil, so putting it on would be nothing short of a disaster. Rather than wrapping it up carefully to make sure nothing bad happens, Sonata simply tossed it into her bag, and proceeded to leave the graveyard with her prize. This is where her story comes to an end because according to the book, she simply disappeared as though she had gone to another world altogether, leaving no trace behind. I didn't know it at the time as I didn't want to think about Ganondorf's parting words, but I was going to meet this version of Sonata someday. To think that a mask had such tremendous power granted to someone who wears it. While the thought does sound ridiculous, after what I've experienced, anything could happen regardless. Before I wrap things up with this story, there is one last piece that has to do with Twilight, for she was speaking to someone whom she befriended during Ganondorf's attempt to conquer the world. The identity of this person was never known by name, but it's said that they were someone that she cherished. This person did have a title which had a meaning in the future. The hero of time. The one who traveled back and forth through time to save Hyrule.
While I am sad you are leaving, I understand your reasons for doing so,
said Twilight.
It's a personal journey. Yes, to find someone who means a great deal to you. Even though I have only known you for a very short time, it feels like it has been even longer, as though it transcends time itself. While I still do not understand what experiences you encountered in the future, it has made you become more aware of the world around you. While your fellow forest children would love to see you return to them, I know that cannot be because you are not of their kind, given you know the truth about your heritage. I do not even know if we shall ever see each other again after this farewell, yet I will not allow it to break my heart, for I know this was fated,"
said Twilight.
"I hope to return within a few years." "That seems a reasonable length given the circumstances,"
said Twilight.
"I'd rather not go, because there is no telling what Ganondorf will do given his current predicament, yet I'm certain your father has taken care of that. The Gerudo King of Thieves currently waits for the day to come when he will be executed for his treachery, but that is something which need not concern either of us, because my father has ensured he will not escape. To think that this kingdom would plunge into a never-ending darkness because of his desire to claim the Triforce, yet you have prevented that future from happening. Still, no one in Hyrule will even know that they were saved by you,"
said Twilight. Many heroes would protest against something like this because they would want to be recognized for their hard work, yet they prefer fame and glory over wanting to do the right thing because greed consumes their hearts. Others are much more honorable, and prefer not to be showered with endless praise and reward, as preventing disaster, and protecting innocent lives is their preference.
"It's for the best." "Yes, as they would never believe a child from the forest saved them, but know that what you did shall never be forgotten by the royal family for as long as we live. Your story will be a hidden legend that will be passed down from generation to generation so that it can never be forgotten. I do have one final request, if that is okay, for this could be the last time we see each other in this lifetime,"
said Twilight.
"What is it?" "I want you to stay here for one final night,"
replied Twilight.
"But my journey can't be delayed." "This is true, and yet I wish you could stay,"
said Twilight.
"For you, I'll accept your request, but I must leave within the early hours of the morning, otherwise I will lose the trail. I will not pry into such matters, for they are personal to you, but before you depart from here in the morning, there is something which I need to give to you, because it is my belief that you should have it,"
said Twilight.
"Why not now?" "While the item in question has been in my possession throughout these last few days, it belongs to my family in general, so I need to ask my father if I am allowed to give it to you. No doubt you know what it is that I am talking about, but this will happen in the morning, so for now we shall retreat to my chambers, for I have more questions regarding the future of Hyrule,"
replied Twilight. Princess Zelda would hand over the sacred treasure of her family to this friend of hers, for she believed it would remain safe in their hands, and didn't wish to be reminded of the fact that Ganondorf wanted it in his bid to conquer the world. According to the book, what became of her from this point remains unknown, because history never recorded anything other than she became a wonderful ruler when she succeeded her father in a number of years. However, the Hyrule Historia does mention a chapter about her life in the future where the evil king was banished instead of executed as he was in the past. I think that sounds like a good read, for I'm curious as to how they managed to rebuild Hyrule. I'm not sure why I have this urge to know so much about a video game, but my best guess is that my experiences in Hyrule made me truly appreciate what it was, despite it being nothing more than a video game world. I don't understand why certain events in Hyrule's history was written down for future generations to learn about, yet others were never recorded, making them perhaps the more sought-after legends, but maybe they had a good reason for doing so. While I would love to read about Zelda's trials in the future, My friends are calling me because I've been here in Pinkie Pie's bedroom on my own reading this book, recovering from a head injury which occurred when I fell down, which still doesn't make sense. My friends are important to me, so I'll save my place by using a bookmark, and come back later on. I'm still finding it difficult to grasp how there are all these additional stories which I never learned about during my adventure, but maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to read each one just to become familiar with what happened. When I get back to this book, I'll be sure to read about what happened in the future. After the evil king's reign came to an end, and the restoration of the kingdom began. To be continued. Bonus Chapter 2, Aftermath of the Future.